the Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Jahan from Boundless Authenticity. I've switched podcast hosting from Spreaker to Podbean, and all episodes are now available for streaming at boundlessauthenticity.podbean.com. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today's return guest is Geraldine Orozco. Geraldine is an international educator and researcher whose work pioneers a comprehensive model of bio-spiritual anatomy and consciousness-based healing. With a clinical background in hypnotherapy and trauma transformation, she specializes in the bioelectrical communication networks that shape cognition, behavior, and human evolution. Her proprietary DNA Reprogramming Method combines epigenetics, ancestral lineage studies, and multidimensional psychology to resolve psychosomatic patterns at their root. Through her training programs and global presentations, Geraldine provides evidence-informed methodologies for the regulation of the nervous system, expansion of perception, and reintegration of fragmented identity structures. Geraldine's media and film features, along with her leadership at the Academy of Light, contribute to a growing academic dialogue bridging neuroscience, quantum biology, and spiritual anthropology. Her work demonstrates how creative life force can be consciously cultivated to restore internal harmony and support the highest expression of human consciousness. Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. If you're new here, please like, share, and subscribe to help our community grow. How can we change the patterns of ancestral suffering?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think first we need to understand the construct in which we exist. We are one in a very literal and also etheric sense. And the most literal way to look at that is biologically in our DNA, we are all emerging from a blueprint of information from which we all emerge. And from that DNA, we all are coming from one source. We all have one source genetically on this planet Earth that's been traced back. And psychologically and emotionally, we tend to cycle through patterns of repeated subconscious belief systems for many generations. And there seems to be a kind of self-organizing for those cyclical patterns in what we can call archetypal archetypes, essentially the archetypes. Now, there are 13 main archetypes, and these 13 archetypes, it basically is every facet of the human psyche and every potential experience that a human can have here in this 3D Earth world, I guess, in the physical world. So these are things that we're all kind of cycling through. And what I've discovered with my work working in hypnotherapy and also as an epigenetic psychotherapist, we've known for a while that we store trauma in our DNA. It's passed down through generations. So let's say we survived the World War II, we're still outliving those same habits of even dietary habits, emotional habits, fear habits. But what we're discovering is that essentially we are inheriting much more than just the trauma. We're inheriting a plethora of information, which also includes our interdimensional capacities, our interdimensional connections, and our interdimensional memory and capacities, which is the key, because the memory is kind of, you can call it the soup from which all of what we've been in our ancestral lineage is recorded. And we access this memory through the bioelectrical system. We are bioelectrical beings. And essentially, the more conductive you become as a bioelectrical system, and I can expand more on that in a little bit, but the more bioelectrical we become, the more we recover memory. And the memory that we're recovering is essentially the memory of our entire life to our childhood, all of our childhood memories. And through DNA reprogramming, for example, with my clients, I'm taking them back to childhood memories, accessing the memory there, the emotional memory. And it's through that emotional memory that we begin to go into the ancestral memory, because we discover that the emotions that we're feeling are mostly mom and dad's, or their imprints, their impressions that we have taken on rather than our own emotions. And actually, it's really interesting, because let's say that you have a deep program in the family of unworthiness or disempowerment. That's something that's passed down through mom and dad. And then you go back and you discover grandma, grandpa, great grandma, on and on. You begin to weave into the construct of our societal engineering. And you begin to realize how many of our belief systems are really part of a system, kind of social engineering for many generations. And you also begin to understand why that is. And so on the other side of that is a really powerful human empowerment, where the human can alchemize those limiting belief systems into really powerful co-creative potential. And that is when the human starts to really integrate all these, you can call them lessons, you can call them opportunities, whatever you want to call them. They are just pure experiences that the human learns how to alchemize. And essentially every generation, the beauty of this system is that the beauty of this construct, really, this is a universal law, and it's also an earth law. We are moving through a Fibonacci sequence. Everything is designed by that Fibonacci sequence of self-organizing principle, and that means that everything is cyclical. But it also means that along with being cyclical, we're also ascending. So every generation is equipped genetically, emotionally, biologically, to transcend the previous limitations of the previous ancestral lineage. So this is really amazing, because some of us were born into really, really difficult families, and we feel overwhelmed, alone, disempowered. But when we begin to dig into those layers, we begin to realize how little those ancestral traumas really need to take an effect over who we really are. And so energetically, we're talking about an energetic network in the body. So let's talk about the spiritual biology of this aspect. Essentially, as being bioelectrical beings, all of these thought forms that we are inheriting are held up in our energetic space. And so that is removed whenever we release, we become aware of every one of those belief systems. They begin to release the blockage that is within the energy field. So you have people that are healing. You have them remembering who they are. Their purpose becomes very clear. So, it's just part of the natural healing mechanism that the human holds within themselves.
What examples of these ancestral patterns do you see playing out right now?
Amazing question. I mean, you see, right now, it's a very pinnacle time, because we are moving from an era, 25,000 year cycle, into a new cycle. And that's a really huge deal. I know we've been building up into this, obviously, but those that have been more connected, that have been working on their connection to kind of come more into harmonic order, we kind of begin to really notice the shifts that are happening globally. And there's definitely a very powerful rise in consciousness on the planet that is allowing humanity to educate themselves on another way of being, which is the result of the deprogramming of an old system that is very parasitic, imbalanced. And we have a lot of trauma about the use of feminine power. Feminine power, which is the divine feminine, is the direct connection to the divine. So we have a lot of trauma about that. We're recovering from the burning of witches. We're recovering from the Inquisition. We're recovering from, the religions that had conquested many of the ancient civilizations, and ancient mystery schools that have been dissolved. That was the masculine kind of suppressing that intuitive divinity. And so that's reemerging now. And so the reemergence of that means that the primary themes that we're working on is the fear of our divinity. That was a theme for the majority of my sessions today. As a matter of fact, this entire week, we are afraid of our own divinity. We're afraid of our power. What does it mean to be powerful? And we're not just talking about brute force. We're talking about intuitive power. And that it's a very different quality of energy, because you must be completely vulnerable, come back to that childlike state of co-creation, and at the same time, extremely trusting in your divine all and nothing at the same time. So, it's kind of being okay with coming into surrender and not necessarily identifying or attaching to any one thing. And that's a really hard thing for humanity, because we live in a physical world. We want to touch things, feel things. We want security. And so the third is learning how to feel safe in vulnerability, feeling very safe in vulnerability, feeling and being the source of your safety. That's going to be a very powerful one for the coming era, because we have an influx of information because of AI. We didn't talk about AI, but because of the influx of the entire restructuring of governmental, educational, financial systems. The way that was our comfort zone before as survivors, we were actually quite comfortable being survivors, is going to have to shift into no longer surviving from that way. So, that kind of shift in being and becoming a co-creator is essentially what we're becoming. It's a very proactive and, seemingly it may feel vulnerable for the majority of humanity. So these are pretty deep ancestral wounds, and every human that has signed up to be on the planet at this time, it's the first of its kind for this lineage, for the human timelines. We've had many generations of incarnations where we've kind of been reaching towards that, but this is really the pinnacle point where we enter into a major expansion of consciousness.
One of the most popular questions I get asked is, what exactly is quantum entanglement? And how can we process that and change it?
Quantum entanglement is, I'm not sure if it's necessarily, I'll put it this way. It's the nature of this construct. We are one at the molecular level, at the atomic level, we are one. And particles of ourselves exist in others, in all things, at various, various states. And so, to become entangled, what we really want to know, the question is, how do we neutralize our perhaps toxic or imbalanced attachment to those connections to all things? That's really the question, because we're never going to eliminate the fact that you are connected to everything, that you're one with everything. In fact, going deeper into that awareness that you're one with everything is what releases the attachment, the codependency, the imbalance, the exchange of energy between yourself and something. So when we talk about ways in which we're entangled, we become entangled collectively through hive mind mentalities and things like this. We become entangled etherically, which is the strongest way that we're entangled into this planet Earth, vibrationally, right? So and what directs that vibrational entanglement is your resonance. So if your vibrational frequency is at a very specific rate where your belief systems are, let's say, disempowerment, loneliness, fear, you are literally co-creating energetically, biologically, etherically, an entire construct in which it reflects that to you. And so that's challenging, because then we have more of that. And that is continuously entering into our space, challenging those beliefs and confirming some of those beliefs at times, until you break away from that limiting, hit that ceiling and go beyond that. So to work with entanglement energetically, we work with something called cords, energetic cords. Cords is just a really good word to talk about the exchange of life force. Imagine just the way neural pathways reconnect to thought forms, and they are reinforced by the reinforcement of those belief systems. It's the same way. Our etheric system is exactly the same way. It's as if we have all these let's just imagine millions of nerves that connect us to all organisms in this universe. And if our vibrational frequency is through this etheric nervous system in resonance with something, and we repeat a loop of fear with, let's say, a brother or a sister or a child, you're going to continue to repeat that loop, reinforcing. So to end that loop, first you have to become aware of where your energy is going, where it's leaking, where it's not productively being exchanged, and you cut the cord on their end. Okay. But psychologically, that means that you're no longer feeding that loop. So you would have to remove the cord from your body. And these are very real etheric cords. Like, you will see them like tentacles. You'll see them like threads. People say they look like nerves, in coming into the body. And they attach to the etheric layers of the body as much as the organs and the nervous system, chakra system, all these systems. It's multi-layered. Every single attachment is a thought form that was not processed in the body. And you can imagine we can have a fear thought form for millions of life experiences that we just keep repeating. So that's why when we work at the root cause in DNA reprogramming, we're accessing that root belief system, and alchemizing that belief releases your resonance to this energy cord, and it becomes loose and it relieves from the body. And so that is an empty space that now has to be replaced. There's no such thing as deletion or elimination of anything. We are only learning how to transmute everything, because that's the nature of this construct. It's about transmutation, the change of energy of one form to another. So you release that fear into, let's say, you can simplify with love or compassion. And you would have to close that repeated loop psychologically, emotionally, and in your everyday co-creative actions into an action, a thought, a belief, a feeling of compassion and love. And so now your resonance changes. And so your entanglement in this quantum system also changes, because your vibrational frequency is not a match to those things that you keep connecting to. We want to continue doing this with all of these limiting belief systems, all these cords. We can have thousands of cords on the body. These cords are not limited to your immediate families or friends or people that you're interacting with. We also have cords in the etheric realms. So anytime that we are leaving the body, every time we're sleeping, we leave our bodies into astral states, and we also create cords. So this is what all ancient mystery schools discussed, that the more we become conscious, the more we become aware, lucid in how we're interacting in all dimensional planes. That's the invitation. And so the human becomes healthy and sovereign and has the ability to access their free will by calling back the life force into their body. That's the key. And so I guess the most important part of talking about entanglement is that we are experiencing all this entanglement so as to experience free will eventually. We must understand that free will is very important to the co-creation of this system.
So let's talk about karmic contracts. What specifically happens when we break them?
Oh yeah, that's a big question, a hot topic this season. So when we talk about karmic contracts, so perfect segue, because let's go back to that example of the child or the brother with the fear program. Now, on a higher etherical psychological level, when we came into the incarnation of the family, let's say this family where we share with the brother, we made an agreement, and the agreements are created again by resonance and by vibrational frequency. So I select to come in and incarnate into this family because of all of my history of vibrational frequency lessons and everything that I'm remember, when I talk about past lives, future lives, we're talking about simultaneous lives. And so everything that exists in my plethora of experience becomes a whole vibrational signature. This signature is coming into resonance with this ancestral lineage, which I've been cycling through for a while. And so my incarnation into this family lineage now offers me an opportunity created by myself as an experiencer to alchemize those ancestral contracts. The contracts are, you see, I was my great-grandpa, let's say great-great-great-grandpa that couldn't embody his intuition. I was also my grandmother who couldn't trust her intuition. I was also the mother who couldn't, live intuitively and connected to herself. And then I am me that mistrusts the intuition that comes to me. So as you can see, we have many generations of these belief systems. And so working with karmic contracts specifically is this. We want to look at what is the core root of that mistrust, and what do we need to embody, what do we need to become and understand in order to alchemize that mistrust. And therefore, we would be dissolving those karmic contracts. It's basically alchemizing the root emotional programs that were running in the subconscious mind. This is pretty deep shadow work. The deep subconscious belief systems, when you alchemize them, it starts to clean up your ancestral bloodline. And so we have karmic contracts with every person, place, and thing that we interact with in the physical and in the non-physical. And so the invitation is that we learn how to proactively clear those contracts, because an interesting things happen when you come into this dimension, which the intention is that you experience contrast. It's duality. Not all universes are based on duality, but in this universe, in this construct for many dimensions, we're experiencing duality. And so we are learning how to explore a huge range of potential experiences of duality. And we do it through many lifetimes that we incarnate. So the human that chooses to alchemize those limiting belief systems, clearing the karmic contract, begins to experience the physical dualistic life in a very different way. When you clear up those karmic contracts and you choose to live in the present moment, because in the present moment, you're not influenced unconsciously by those millions of repetitive unconscious programs. In the present moment, you have to choose and create in the moment. And so that in itself is the breaking of those patterns, of all of those patterns. But we work etherically. And the way I work with this is that you can imagine a house that represents your soul, essentially. Your soul, it's just a representation. And the house has many rooms. But one of these rooms is your karmic contract rooms. And it's filled with all of the agreements that you have made in this incarnation to transcend your limiting belief systems, the limitations of yourself and your ancestors. And so when you use your seventh chakra now, the reason why we use the seventh chakra, because the seventh chakra is the seat of the higher self. It's also the entry into the library of the Akashic records. Because this is your ancestral memory and etheric memory. Your etheric memory DNA is accessed through the seventh chakra. In the eighth, it's the etheric and higher DNA. Okay, so we have many levels of holographic DNA. So you want to use that because basically you're wiping the slate from all those ancestral programs and you're going to replace it with the vibrational frequency of your crown. This is called a creative color. This creative color, and this is something that's been practiced for generations and generations. This is in all the ancient mystery schools, that when you work with your karmic contracts and you dissolve them, you immediately realign your entire body generating creation system into the 0 point. And that's what we're doing energetically. So the clearing of those contracts and the filling of that room with your creative color. Now, to find your creative color, you can do that through meditation, but it does require you to be, very clear in your body. Not, you see, when the emotional body is messy or out of control, your intuition is tainted by that. So, you have to be in the 0 point to access the true intuition. And so the utilizing of that to clear those contracts, you create an intention that now I am going to experience the same lessons for my soul evolution and my ancestral healing, but I'm going to do it through compassion, love, and awareness. And that is a very different state of creation. So it changes the way that you process life experiences. It changes your awareness in those life experiences, and also changes your ability to access free will and change the timelines that are potentially available to you in those experiences. So it's a very powerful practice. And what I've experienced is that if you continue to do this, eventually those contracts completely dissolve and you come into a pure state of creation, and anything is possible. It's where we start to access this kind of Jedi abilities, that we talk. Star Wars is so lovely, depicting that humans have the ability to really have more power over the material, creative power in very profound ways.
My creative color is a beautiful rose gold. I would actually like for anyone listening to comment what theirs is if they know what it is.
That's amazing. Beautiful.
Tell me about time traveling through the quantum field and the superpower of decision making.
When we talk about time travel, so I guess these two can go hand in hand. When we talk about decision making, what we really want to understand is, are we aware of the consequences of our creations? And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to understand, because right now, for the majority of people, our values are confused because most of our belief systems are based on a construct that we've adopted. We haven't really thought much into it. We haven't really questioned a lot of things about those values. And that leaves us very confused, very lost, very lonely, feeling helpless. It's necessary to bring our values back in harmony with harmonic order, with natural order. And what we're talking about is that your values are aligning more to universal laws. So, for example, the Hermetic laws, those main universal, indisputable truths that are underlying all of reality, all of creation, all of beings on this planet. The more we learn to align with that, the more harmony, peace, and free will and co-creation we're going to experience. So that being said, talking about time travel, which is another element of that. I mean, time is very much a human illusion. It's a human construct. It's something that the humans have created in order to have some imaginary control over their life experiences. But in our planet Earth, even the way we measure time has been manipulated, even from its original manipulation. It used to be that we used to measure time, the times of day, based on natural order. We used to work with the circadian rhythm, and all Chinese medicine, ancient civilizations all used 13-month calendars, 18-month calendars, more complex energy systems that were based on alignment with the stars, planetary systems, and nature. And that is actually what the human needs in order to come into a very healthy, regenerative system. What has happened is that that's been cut down into 12 months. The days have been split into the 24 hours, and all of the geometric construct that is created by that numerology is more of a square. It's a more symmetry, which is based on matter. It's based on matter. It's based on the management and manipulation of matter. And so when you move from natural energy systems to matter, it changes everything about the human. This is why we have a lot of illnesses in the human race, because we've come out of that harmonic order. It's why we are lost, disconnected, and more importantly, it's why we are not able to remember our dream state. Because our dream state is really extremely important for the human to remember, because we live half of our lives in dream state. But in that dream state, you're traveling to many dimensions and many timelines. We are traveling to what we think are future lives and past lives. Everything is existing simultaneously. And so for that reason, if you were to remember your past simultaneous lives, you would probably have a lot of access to memories that will help you navigate exact blocked experiences you're having in this lifetime. So in hypnotherapy, when I'm working with people, we are moving beyond time and space in the field, and we are accessing past lives, future lives. They go through death experiences, rebirth experiences. They begin to understand themselves as a whole system of energy rather than that individual human. And that is super important for the human to remember themselves at, because that is where free will begins to take place. And so when we talk about traveling, time travel, in reality, that's basically becoming aware that you're interdimensional. We're constantly time traveling if we're aware of it, because it's just the intention that wherever your energy is directed, you can enter into many different dimensions. You can, through your body, every day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you're constantly moving in and out of dimensions. You might see a ghost or a disembodied soul, and that's an entire different dimension beyond time and space in which you're interacting with. You might drive by a pasture and then remember a past life in which you lived in that dimension, in that timeline. And so, again, we are continuously entering into different timelines. Now, where this becomes more apparent and more clear cut is in your dream state. In your dream state, where you go into the dream realms, really, we navigate 13-dimensional planes. The majority of people are probably around maybe maximum 8 dimension. But the more awake you become, the more you work and clear your energy body, you can go into any infinite number of dimensions to access fractals of yourself. So this is what we need to do, because what happens when you access a fractal of yourself is that you recover memory, which allows you to activate the dormant DNA that is existing in that timeline. And that is what calls back your life force into this body. You won't access anything that you don't need to heal yourself right now and to become whole right now. At any time, you never access anything that's useless, unnecessary, or it just doesn't support you. And so, but it requires an awareness to recognize that and to know what to do with it. And then, so am I answering do you have anything more specific you want to know about time travel? Because I'm sure I'm talking about it in a different way, perhaps. And I want to make sure I'm answering your question. I can sit here and take myself into the subconscious and access my past life and heal that part of me and then return back into this awareness. That's time travel. And I haven't left my body. It's within the quantum field that we navigate, and you don't need a physical body for that. It is pure intention that is existing in everything simultaneously. So your awareness is what allows you to access those points of information.
Well, you've been through a lot of this stuff before too. Your last episode, The Fractal Nature of Human Consciousness, you go really deep into explicit detail on how all of this works, the mechanics and things like that. So listeners can always go back to that one to get more. Speak to me about AI and its effect on human consciousness in both the positive and negative polarities.
Yeah, super important right now, because as we enter into period 9, we're entering into a potential, and I saw this in November of last year, where I was downloaded and seen the potential future of humanity. There are going to be very powerful intentions to experiment and test artificial intelligence on humanity in many ways that are going to end up being quite destructive to the human DNA. And so those ways are mechanical, medical, pharmaceutical, and then psychological. Okay, so Right now, we are at the precipice, and this happens in many ancient civilizations. When ancient civilizations are reaching the pinnacle point of their technological advancement, it's usually when a civilization begins to reach its fall. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. And so, to reach that, all of this old system is going to change. Political systems are going to change completely into a more global system. Financial institutions are also going to change into a more global, interconnected, and also non-physical system. It's going to be digital, I suppose. And education is going to change because of the influx of new understanding of human history, which needs to be rewritten. And the plus side of AI is that we get to access this information more easily, I suppose. The downside of it is that we're going to have to go through a complete restructuring of educational systems. I mean, that's already happening. A lot of schools are having conflicts and civil situations where we don't know what we're supposed to be teaching in school anymore. And that's going to continue to get worse until that collapses and we begin to rewrite that educational system. And the rewriting of that educational system is going to be, hopefully, and this is a choice that humanity has to be making, based on core fundamental universal laws. Why? Because one of the positive things that AI will bring us is a more expansive awareness. And you can't hide it anymore. You can't hide the truth of the impact of toxic systems on our planet Earth. And that's something that we have to very soberingly face and make very drastic changes. The planet Earth will self-destruct if we continue to push and try to push these old systems to continue the way that they have been. They simply cannot exist anymore. And so for those of you that are working in these areas, in your careers, in your expansive states, we need to be very proactive right now that we are carefully making these changes, mindful of a more collective, unified way of looking at the future of humanity. We have gone from an individualistic, parasitic system where everything is give and take, it's competition, it's suppression of information, it's control, power over something else. And we are being forced in order to move into a more unified system. And so artificial intelligence would play a huge role in that, because more than ever, humanity has access to a lot of creative power accessible to them if they know how to use it and if they understand that the timeline split will occur like this. We are being groomed to become dependent psychologically and emotionally on artificial intelligence. And that will be a big mistake, because when you do that, biologically, psychologically, mentally, a lot of problems are happening in the body, because you are designed to be a creative being. And your creation is the words that you speak, the thoughts that you think, the things that you imagine. Our imagination has been destructed slowly up until this point. And now with the AI, it'll be the annihilation of imagination of humanity and the annihilation of creativity. So humanity has to get their values really straight. Creativity cannot be replaced ever by artificial intelligence, ever. And it's not because it can't do it. It's because doing that is the destruction of the human DNA and the integration of the soul with the body. And on the other side of that, the biological changes that are going to happen to humans that are completely dependent on social media, that's already been happening for a long time. We've been dealing with, those are all artificial systems that we've already been indoctrinating into ourselves. We are biochemically dependent on social media, watching TikTok reels, Instagram things. Those are emoting emotions, sensations, biochemical responses. That's a big problem. And that is also the changing of our DNA. That's been slowly engineering our DNA to a weaker point. So as we clean that up, the next step is transhumanism. We're already there. So all of this is just an incremental pathway to transhumanism. The next is really powerful pushes to depend on artificial and mechanical robotic medical implantations that are designed to help us with intuition, healing the body, things that humanity knows how to do on their own. And this is where we're going to reach a major crossroad, because right now our education and our preparation has to be focused on teaching the human how to heal themselves. This is not an imagination. It's not just simple placebo. We can heal our bodies. We can heal our minds. We can come back into harmonic order. And that requires a certain cultivation away from technology. However, what I see in the future, if we can get past these years, the humans that have implanted all the fancy gadgets, become these transhumanist powerhouses of fake beings, they're going to develop a lot of new illnesses. And the new illnesses are going not only to attack the body, but the spiritual etheric energy system. The pineal gland, there will be a new disease in which the pineal gland will become really destroyed. Now, that is a very big problem because we don't understand the etheric power of the pineal gland and the heart. These are two gigantic bioenergetic energy systems that actually are helping cleanse the planet Earth. And so when we disable that, we're going to have an imbalance in the Earth, and the Earth will retaliate because right now we already have massive solar flares. Those are not separate from us. The sun is a conscious organism. It is responding to the consciousness of the Earth. We're in dialogue energetically with that, and we've experienced a lot of that, and we're going to get more of that. The purpose is the cleansing of the DNA. On the other side of that, if humanity can learn to cultivate their organic technology and then use AI to carry out what needs to be done to bring this planet back into harmonic order, this is where we will thrive into an advanced civilization beyond your dreams and imagination, back into living into nature. It can be smart homes, but the technology won't be toxic and destructive to the human. This is what we need to be using AI to help us construct and see beyond our limitations. And to bring healing, medicine that is extremely advanced. Not all robotics and AI is negative. There's beautiful things that are being created right now that are so exciting. But the human organic technology can never, ever be replaced. And so that's something that right now, entering into this next year, we have to double down and start to develop. Each one, telepathy, remote viewing, your intuition, your discernment, your self-healing capacity. That's the creation of an entire really strong electromagnetic field that connects you to many dimensions. And, from there, naturally will happen disclosure and all these things about contact and everything that is down our timeline. So this is what I see.
So you mentioned just if we can make it through these times. And I think that there's a whole lot of effort as we work together. People like you and I, we co-create these podcast episodes and we inform a whole bunch of other people, and then they raise their consciousness, and then a certain group of tricksters gets together and they come up with something. You're like, oh shit, no, they're getting smarter again. And they come up with this new thing and they're like, okay, I don't know what else to do. Let's just lock them down in digital enslavement. I feel like we're at that chapter.
Well, we're not the first civilization to work with AI. I mean, AI exists already, in this universe, many different kinds of AI. But I think the idea is to not think about power over or disempowerment. You see, we think right now, because we're not able to see beyond, we believe that we can be victimized by AI. But the fact of the matter is, only if you allow it and only if you let yourself go and you don't cultivate your own intuition, your own technology. Your technology is beyond any AI that exists, period. And I say that confidently because I've experienced it, I've seen it, I've seen other civilizations, I've been to different planetary systems where they have already gone through these stages. I see what is possible, but it is what I've learned from those civilizations is that humanity has to come back to basics. It's about the reconnection with the self. It's coming back into harmonic order. It's learning to respect and take responsibility for your creations. That's a hard thing because we're a very immature human race. We're very immature. We're just learning to respect nature, to respect the earth. Without those things, we will always feel disempowered and victimized by greater energy systems. So, it's just, we're just remembering. We just have to remember gently. But there is no danger coming up as long as we understand and remember who we are. And that's my hope for humanity right now.
Well, Geraldine, thanks for this fantastic conversation. Thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. Just to remind everyone where they can find you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here as always, Jahan. Thank you for your work. If you guys want to work with me, you can reach me at GeraldineOrozco.com, private sessions, hypnotherapy, or DNA reprogramming. And I have a YouTube channel, Geraldine Orozco, where I teach all of these concepts in great depth. You can find me at Geraldine Orozco. I also have an international support group for those of you that are interdimensionally experiencing and need to understand at hybridmother.com. So thank you so much. It was a joy to be here.
Thanks again.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean? All of the questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast.